I recognize myself as brave and adventurous every day. um, I mean, this film was a pretty big adventure. We found ourselves in Colombia in the jungle, in a place north of Santa Marta on the borders between Colombia and Venezuela. It's pretty adventurous. There were all manner of things on any given day that thought it might be a nice idea to bite and attempt to kill us. James actually was minding his own business in the monitor tent one day, and there was a fairly beautiful, large, pinkish cream spider, and it was just a very, very thin piece of gauze, this tent, and James was leaning back on it, and the spider was climbing up his back. And I think the snake wrangler or somebody that knew that terrain saw this and panicked and swatted it away. And apparently, if it had bitten James, he would have been dead in about 30 seconds.
I think it was a really honest portrayal of what it was like for women then, and I think what I loved about Nina was that she was so modern, and he really celebrated that in her. They were Buddhist. She was a suffragette. She was raising children, but I don't think she ever sort of felt sorry for herself. She feels very strong and very contemporary and very liberated, but battling against the confines of a very oppressive society, which is something that's thankfully changed and is continuing to change. But I loved her.
I mean, I guess I do have an intellectual curiosity in different characters I want to kind of try and empathize with. I guess I relate on that level, and also just in general reality, not just in my work. I kind of have that with my life as well. I just kind of I don't really like to judge people that much. How would I survive in that environment? I don't know. I mean, when I first read the script, I loved the idea of there being aspects of areas of the world that you could still explore and were totally uncontrolled. I mean, there are now, but I think something about everybody being so much more connected, it kind of takes away that mystery and kind of majesty of going into the unknown. I think I kind of tell myself I would kind of prefer that, but really I would probably want to have my Twitter. Yeah, I can relate on that level, I think.
Initially, the draw was to work with James, but then once I read the script, I just became very interested in the themes of the film, particularly the sort of central conflict that Percy feels, which is this dedication to his bringing forth this intention for his own life and doing what he felt compelled to do, sort of fulfill his personal sense of destiny, and the inevitable conflict that creates in honoring the other responsibilities in life, namely with Percy family and his economic responsibility. And that was something that I had, at that time in my life, after doing Sons of Anarchy for so long and doing a film in between every season, felt like I had been very, very selfish in neglecting my personal life and in my pursuit of my own sense of personal destiny. So that was something that I've been sort of grappling with and been interested in trying to reconcile in my own life for a while. And it was clearly something that James was interested in exploring. So that immediately created a connection for me with this guy. I felt like I could relate to and bring a richness to that central conflict in the character. And then just generally, I mean, I was hungry for an opportunity both with substance of material and quality of director to move forward in my career and do something, the level of work that I'd always been aspiring to do but hadn't quite achieved yet in my career. So this felt like the opportunity in a lot of ways that I'd been waiting my whole life for.
Thank you.
So thank you, James.
Thank you.
The cinematographer and I, Darius Kanji and I, this was our second movie together. We have a very good rapport. He drives me absolutely crazy, and I drive him crazy, and we fight every day, and it's wonderful. You know, he's a real artist. You know, the best thing about him is that he talks back to me. You know, if I say, let's go, let's shoot, and he says, no, you have to worry, the light is not exactly right, you know, you can't shoot yet. And we don't shoot. So at the moment you get frustrated, and then all of a sudden you see the footage and the stills. We weren't watching footage, actually. I was getting digital stills back because of the way the film was shot. And you forgive all. He has the real artist's eye. And we communicate really through painters. I showed him a lot of Rousseau and Claude Lorraine and Corot and other artists like that, and really not through other movies. And because he has that sensitivity. About the First World War, I thought it was essential, story-wise, an essential bit, because I thought it would give the lie, or really give full color to the lie that is the idea of the advanced European civilization. It's in the book. I didn't obviously make it up. He was blinded by chlorine gas. And I thought it was a great opportunity to expose that the film is really about two different planets almost, and one thinking of itself as superior, and show that the war, I think, gave it a context that hopefully moves the film beyond, like, you know, white man goes to jungle movie, that it had a bigger scope than that. So we had a definite dedication to getting it right, and I think it was as bad, at least for me. I don't know how you guys felt, but in the shooting, I had as tough a time there as I did in Amazonia, because, you know, being arrogant, I said I want the trenches to be the exact, you know, all this crap. And you get there and you realize, wait a minute, what did you do? And they say, well, we did exactly what you asked. This is exactly the width of a real trench. That's exactly the width of the real battlefield. And you say, it's too close. The enemies are too close to each other. And the trench is too narrow. Well, Mr. Gray, that's what you asked for. And you sit there and you say to yourself, wow, I'm an idiot, because Stanley Kubrick did it better than you. And he had wide trenches and a faraway battlefield. And he was smarter than you, and he knew what to do. So, and I was sitting there in the mud and, you know, all that stuff. So I had a tough time of it. But, you know, hopefully it's accurate, you know. One of the great misfortunes of having a film in a festival is that you have all these people coming up to you and telling you how good other movies are, and you don't get to see any of them. And they say, oh, have you seen such and such? It's amazing. So the fact that there are a number of other true stories I'm totally blind to, because, you know, I was on Air Berlin, you know, eating food like Spätzle an hour ago or whatever. So I have no idea what's going on. But in this case, a true story, it's not really a factor for me whether it's a true story or not. I know it's a draw for many people. What is interesting to me is if I connect with the character. And when I read the book, when I was sent the book, what interested me was a person who felt inadequate, and the power of class to determine his worldview and his desires, the power of class to shape him and what he wanted and what he felt like he didn't have. And that was a very powerful idea to me. So that was really the reason I pursued it. The movie, unfortunately, is, I think, as relevant as ever, because we cannot close the book on what is clearly a white, let's be honest here, a white and very racist colonialist view of the world. And unfortunately, it still needs exposure. So I wish I could say, you know, that we don't have this wave of nationalism that's gripping the world now, but we do. And more than ever, I think we need to be reminded that we're all made of the same clay. So the unfortunate truth is, I think it's very relevant, and I wish it weren't. Well, the irony is I had been obsessed with a certain degree of accuracy, right? I thought, I'm going to go down to Brazil, where he actually was. But as you know, if you're from Brazil, large portions of where Fawcett were, which were deep jungle, are now basically soybean fields for farming. So as much as I would have wanted to shoot where he was, I didn't want the film to look like Nebraska. So there I knew that I was in a little bit of trouble because there's no longer a possibility to be exactly accurate. Given that fact, I was offered many opportunities to make the film in Southeast Asia, Australia, South Africa, places like that. But I was very frightened and didn't want to do that because I knew that getting the indigenous people right, so to speak, would be impossible in that area of those areas of the world. So I said it has to be at least close to Amazonia so we can get the real thing in the film. And one thing that was extremely important to me was to establish an independence of the indigenous population. That, in other words, in the story and in the film, that they didn't rely on Fawcett at all for their own existence and for their own well-being. That it wasn't that, you know, Fawcett went down there and saved them and what a good guy he is. That was not the point of the story at all. So the focus had to be on establishing the fact that they were independent actors. By the way, we used 4 different tribes. They were fantastic actors because they were totally oblivious to the camera in the best way. But directing was impossible because I would tell them to do something, you know, I would ask for something to be done, and then you would have someone translate it into either Spanish or Portuguese, and then the Portuguese or Spanish would be translated into their language, and then, so you would say, can you do me a favor and walk and sit over there, and then by the time it got translated, they were jumping up and down. So I realized that there was going to be this big gap. But then I decided that any attempt I had to tell them what to do was silly anyway. And at a certain point, we just started to roll the camera on what they were doing, and watching a certain level of existence was great anyway.
When we were shooting it, we were so beholden to the elements that the whole time. I mean, it was like, it was a completely virgin jungle, so there's just creatures everywhere. Like, me and Charlie were just like hacking our way through like completely ridiculously dangerous jungle where it could be anything at any point. And I think there's a certain element after about a couple of weeks, you just kind of give into it, and you're like, well, if you die, you die, whatever. And there is something kind of nice, and it kind of made me think that maybe I would survive for at least a few seconds. But I don't know, I kind of was going back to a hotel every day. But yeah, it's kind of nice. Once you kind of give into it and just allow yourself to be kind of part of nature, I think it's a very, very nice and sort of peaceful experience. I was attached to this movie for a long time before we even shot it, and saw the script go through lots of different iterations and talked to James tons and tons. I mean, Charlie had 10 days, and I think I had like years, and saw various different versions of the script, and James was always really open to kind of how I saw the character, and was kind of just listened to me about it, and also I just saw the development of where he wanted to take it, and it was just a kind of gradual process. So I didn't have to cram anything in. It was just sort of osmosis. And also, I've never had a more immersive experience on a movie. I mean, when we were especially in the jungle, I mean, it's just happening. So you don't need to think about how to prepare yourself, because it's happening to you, and how you'd react is almost how you would react in reality. What's my favorite movie? This is my favorite movie, obviously.